Hey guys, DC Multiverse dude here, bringing you a look at the upcoming Amazon exclusive gold label Atomic Skull vs Superman 2-pack. Now, right off the bat, you'll see that my box here is pretty dinged up. It's been shipped from Hong Kong all the way to Australia. I had to import this one. That's fine. But while we're talking about the box, let's start with the box. This is really weird. All of a sudden, our 2-packs appear to be lacking any clear window packaging, and McFarlane has gone for this extremely boring, extremely bland plastic-free packaging, and I say that in air quotes because there's plenty of plastic inside the box. But on the outside of the box, you'll see that we just have the DC Multiverse logo and some very uninspired tiny text down the bottom telling us this is in fact the Atomic Skull versus Superman 2-pack. Now, we don't need to wade into the plastic-free packaging debate that's blighted the Marvel Legends, discourse for like a year now. I'm not going to go into it. I don't know what the rationale for this is, if it's environmental, cost-saving, all of the above, probably cost-saving if I'm being honest, but this is really lame, okay? This is bad. For inbox collectors, this is crap because they can't see what's in their package. They can't admire their purchase. I'm not an inbox collector, so I don't really care that much, but even just if you're trying to grab someone's attention, I don't know. It's just extremely, extremely lame. Anyway, there's the box. We'll look at the side. You'll see Atomic Skull versus Superman, Action Comics. And on the back, we have some great art from the comics that doesn't necessarily resemble the figures we get inside all that closely. It's close enough, I guess, but we'll get to that. I wonder why they put this beautiful art on the back. Why is there not at least a rendering of the figure on the front? You'll often see with the Marvel Legends box sets, they give you at least a character render so you can see what's in the box. Sometimes they're not accurate, but I think it's better than this. Either put art on the front, put a render, or better yet, just bring back the clear window. Anyway, that's the box. Let's actually have a look at the figures. Okay, so before we actually get the figures out and talk about them, in detail, I just wanted to show you what's inside the box. You kind of get the two figures jammed inside this plastic clamshell. My first thoughts are, if this is some sort of eco-friendly move, then, look at all this plastic. It's not worth it, just for the sake of a clear window on the packaging. This is still loaded with plastic, so that's not achieving any sort of environmental objective. Secondly, look at the way these figures are posed in here. In these dynamic action poses with their legs bent and arms sort of bent in like they're, fighting. What is the point of that if you can't see it? Right, what is the point of that? I can already see that Atomic Skull's legs are really awkwardly posed in there. They could be bent. There could be deformation in the mold. I'm not happy. If you're not going to show the figures, at least pose them in there in a way that when they come out of the clamshell, there's less risk of them being damaged or deformed. Anyway, let's get them out and let's actually look at these figures. So in terms of accessories, it's fairly standard fare. We get the two display stands that we've seen a million times and I won't waste time going over. We also get the collector's cards. There's Superman, Action Comics with some pretty nice art. And the bio if you'd like to read it. And here we have Atomic Skull, purportedly also from Action Comics. And the bio there. This is the Joseph Martin version of Atomic Skull. You can pause that if you're interested. So we get the two cards, we get the two display stands, we get two pairs of alternate hands. So we get one pair for Atomic Skull. You see there is sort of an open gesture hand and a punchy fist hand. Nice to get, I guess. And for Superman, you'll see we get two flight hands or sort of gesture hands. These are, I think, intended to be sort of more like flight hands. Also nice to get, I suppose, even though we don't come with a flight stand here. And the final and largest accessory is this display base, which has been cast in this translucent plastic. Collectors in this line will know that this is the exact same display base that came with the White Knight Batman versus Azrael set. Those were orange translucent flames. This is just a remold of that in translucent purple. It looks quite nice, though I just don't like this display stand that much. It comes with little pegs to position the figures, but it's really unnatural, the pose that they're in. I guess, look, some people might like this. Some people might like it for sort of a bit of diorama building. It's not that appealing to me. It's just a bit of extra plastic in the box. But, you know, I'm not going to complain too much. It's fine for what it is, I guess. And I think some people will actually get a lot more out of it than I will. All right, taking a look at the figures themselves, which are the main attraction. I think for many, the main attraction here is probably going to be Atomic Skull. Certainly for me, that's what I was excited about when getting this set. Here he is, and as I suspected, it should be blaringly obvious to everybody that his legs are not straight. His left leg is bent like I expected it would be when I saw him in that clamshell. That's really frustrating. I'm going to have to dip him in some hot water and see if I can sort of get that leg posed back into a more natural shape. So immediately I'm like a little bit upset with this figure, you know. And the figure itself is actually pretty good. I mean, this is a reuse. This is largely a reuse of the Power Suit Lex Luthor figure that we've got. But like, this is kind of a cool reuse, you know, for a villain like this, which is, let's face it, you know, a C-list villain for Superman, B-list maybe. Let me know in the comments if you think Atomic Skull is B-list or C-list or worse. I think this is like appropriate. Like, I think this is smart reuse because it doesn't immediately look like Lex Luthor. There's enough changed. I'll do a comparison later to show you. But like, you know, the key bits have been resculpted. So this chest piece with that orb in the middle looks really, really nice, even though it's largely just molded plastic. There's a bit of paint there on that orb. The hands, you can see, are completely new molds in that translucent plastic, trying to give off energy effects, which I think is really good. You see this one is more of a sort of a gesture hand, and that's more of an attack hand. They kind of look weird with both of these on at the same time. I think I might swap them around so that maybe he's only got one effects hand on at any given time, because these kind of seem incompatible to me. Let me know what you think. But I think for what they are, that's pretty cool. That's a way to differentiate this mold and make it unique. You see there's some nice paint on the shins. And the plastic that they've cast this in is beautiful. I actually can't tell if this is molded plastic or paint. It could be paint. If it is paint, it's very nice. And if it's molded plastic, it's equally very nice. You know, he is a monochromatic sort of a character. So, you know, I actually quite like the look of this guy. Head sculpt is really nice. I thought this might have been a redo of the Deathstorm from Blackest Night, with maybe a few modifications, but it's not. To my eye, this is a completely new mold, and I think it's quite good. Like, you can see kind of like that translucent plastic is coming out of his mouth, like the fire is coming out of his mouth. So it's a nice mix between like opaque plastic and translucent plastic. Looks really, really nice. But yeah, if you just look at him at a distance, the trouble is that leg. Anyway, from behind, you know, nice sculpted detail. I think that's the story of this mold. It was true of the Lex Luthor power suit armor. The sculpted detail is really, really good. I'm not going to go through the articulation at length because this is literally that Lex Luthor power armor again. It's sort of first wave McFarlane. It's not the best. You'll see that beneath the shin guards there, the ankles are those sort of ball joint ankles, but this doesn't actually look too bad because of the way those shoes and shin guards have been designed. You know, you can't really see the balls, but the articulation is limited, I think, by those. You'll see that he has single jointed elbows. Yeah, that's just the way it is, single jointed. Although this is not the most athletic figure, I don't know why you'd want double jointed elbows anyway. Like, it is what it is, right? Head, you know, moves okay. It's not going to go all the way around. It'll hit that sort of guard there, but you don't really want his head to spin around. He can look up a decent amount, look down quite well. That's quite nice. Rotates all the way around the diaphragm cut. Decent amount. Oh, actually, no, I was going to say a decent amount of ab crunch, but not really. But can look back, tilt his head back and his, you know, spine back about that much. Yeah, I mean, this is an old figure, let's face it. And that's the thing about this set. We're getting two first-generation figures in this set. And I don't know how to feel about that. Like, I think if this guy was a standalone release that you could buy for $20 US or $23 US, whatever it is, we'd be like, okay, well, this is Atomic Skull. He's not like the biggest name out there. It's a fair reuse. You can use that old mold. It's good enough. It makes sense, right? The fact that you're also buying a remold of that Action Comics 1000 Superman, also a first year McFarlane figure, and they're sort of packaging this up again like 3 years later. I don't know, something about that irks me. Like, I feel like we should just be getting a little bit more new in 2023 for this amount of money. You know, I just think we maybe deserve a little bit more new stuff. But let's have a look at Superman and then form an overall view. Before I get to Superman, I just want to show you a comparison. So here is Atomic Skull next to the Lex Luthor in power armor. You can see that these are based on the same mold, but there's been significant modifications. So right off the bat, I can tell you that their feet are different. Similar, very similar, but different. The shin guards, again, very similar, but with added paint on Atomic Skull and a slightly modified sculpt, but very, very similar. The knee pads, similar, but different. The legs, again, no, they are exactly the same. Look at that. Exactly the same legs. Just Luthor has a bit more paint. And you can see there the diaper piece is completely new. The belly button torso piece is the same. The upper part of the armor is new. So this is completely different sculpt to Lex Luthor, which is nice. Very similar in design, but actually completely different sculpt. The arms are the same except for the gauntlet forearm pieces. New mold there, and obviously new hands. And obviously the head sculpt is completely different. So, you know, it's like, I'd say 50% new, 50% reused, or maybe 60% reused and 40% new. Like it's about half-half. I think if you stand these two on the shelf next to each other, they might look too similar, especially with that color purple underneath, you know, like it's the same. I think if you displayed these guys away from each other on the shelf, you know, they would actually look a little bit better and your eye wouldn't be drawn to the similarities. But there you go. In terms of height, Atomic Skull is actually a fair bit taller, which is interesting. I'm not sure where that extra height comes from. It almost looks like Atomic Skull's waist is sitting a bit higher than Lex's. So query what that's about. But yeah, Atomic Skull, a decent figure. I quite like him. I'm glad to get this villain for my Rogues Gallery sort of shelf, my Legion of Doom shelf. Good villain to get. Is this as good as it could have been? No, but it's okay. Except for that bent leg, driving me insane. So anyway, that's Atomic Skull. All right, here we have Superman. And, you know, this is a very, very familiar figure for most of you. This is just a reissue of the Action Comics 1000 Superman from the first year of the line. I believe it's the first Superman that was ever released in this line. So this is an old figure. Luckily, this is probably, in many collectors' eyes, the best Superman that McFarlane has done to date, still to this day. I think the proportions are really, really solid. Like, you know, we've had so many reissues of that infected Superman body buck that I think we've forgotten how good this original sort of, you know, mold was. The proportions are really quite nice. He's not too buff, he's not too slender. You know, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good. The cape is exactly the same. I actually don't have my original release of this figure anymore. I sold it because I knew I was getting this one. And the reason I sold it is because I really love the color scheme on this one more. I'm not sure how well you can pick this up on camera, but this is a much brighter blue than that initial release, which was more of a dark blue. I think this is more what I think of when I think of Superman. I actually think they could have gone lighter on this blue, like in a more vibrant, like sort of closer to Hush. I think Hush might be a bit brighter than this, but I think this looks really good. I think the red, you know, it's quite a rich red, but it goes really nicely. The blue, yellow, and red looks great all together. And the paint job, yeah, I think the paint job makes this one better. The head sculpt is exactly the same. There might be some slight differentiation in the paintwork on the eyes, but, you know, yeah, there's a slight blue wash in the hair, which I'd like to know if that's in the original Action Comics 1000 Superman. If you've got that figure, let me know if there is a blue wash in the hair. I don't think there was from memory. So I think overall that this is, gosh, it might actually be the best Superman McFarlane has released, which is a little bit sad because it's an old figure, but it's really, really nice. Unfortunately, you know, because it's that first wave re-release, you'll see we've got the ball joint ankles, which are just hideous. The plastic of the ball joint doesn't match the paint on the boots. So that looks really, really bad. And there's really no excuse for it. You know, we're going to reissue this. I don't know why we couldn't have fixed the ankles. It just comes off as a bit cheap. You'll see he comes with like a grippy hand, which I don't really know what the point of that is. Superman's not going to be gripping anything. He should have come with 2 fist hands. So he's got 1 fist hand, 1 grippy hand, and he's got those 2 flight hands I showed earlier. He should come with 2 fist hands, you know, to punch Atomic Skull's lights out. Articulation is exactly the same as that original release. I'm not going to waste your time with it. It's as average as it was back then, you know. Single jointed arms at the elbow, you know, very uninspiring. Kind of gets the job done, but we've come a long way since then. So it's a bit sad that we're sort of seeing this old thing reissued after 3 years. And it's also sad that this is still kind of, you know, one of the best Superman figures that McFarlane's put out. You'll see that the way, the way they've matched the skin tone of the face to the neck, it's close, but it's not quite the same, which is interesting. It's not a problem. No one will really notice it, but, you know, I better mention it while I'm here. Yeah, I mean, you've seen this figure before, guys, and you know if you like it, and you know if you missed out on it before, whether you probably want it or not, and I think, you know, this is a good way to get it, and I think this is the better version. You know, this is the better paint job overall. So let's compare him to another recent Superman. Okay, so here is the Action Comics 1000 Superman next to the Action Comics #1 Superman Platinum variant, which doesn't actually look like Action Comics #1. It looks more like Superman #1, but, you know, you get my meaning. These two, you know, are both some of the better versions of Superman that McFarlane has put out, in my opinion. Both serve very different purposes in a collection. One is more retro, golden age. One is more modern. I think I like the blue of the Action Comics much better. It's a lighter blue. But there you have it. If you're curious what those look like together, 2 very good Superman figures. One is on the infected body buck. One is on that older buck. I think that older buck actually is much better. And I think it's time to retire the infected buck. Let me know what you think about that. So in summing up, that is the Atomic Skull and Superman 2-pack. Overall, I think it's a pretty uninspiring 2-pack. It's 2 old molds, very old molds from 3 years ago, you know, with a few accessories chucked in, including a display stand that we've seen, you know, 2 years ago. It's just a lot of reuse. If you have no love for Atomic Skull as a character, you can probably pass. There are probably going to be better Supermen than this figures coming out, you know, at some point. If you love Atomic Skull, it's probably worth it, particularly if you don't have Action Comics 1000 Superman. This is probably one of the better Supermans that are in the line. I think the color's great. I think it's an upgrade over the previous version in terms of the paintwork. Yeah, it's like your mileage is going to vary. For me, it's a must get, but I can imagine for the most of you, it's probably a pass. So just my thoughts. You know, keep an eye out in the coming days. I'll have my reviews on some of the Aquaman 2 figures. They should be great. Turn your notifications on. Please subscribe if you haven't. Let me know in the comments what you think of this 2-pack. And until next time, happy collecting and thank you for watching. This video was brought to you with the support of Fett's Hideout Toys and Collectibles. For a great range of toys from DC Multiverse to Black Series to Marvel Legends, Hot Toys and more, visit Fett's Hideout Toys and Collectibles and use the offer code DCDUDE. That's DCDUDE for an exclusive discount month to month. Could be 5% off or $5 off at checkout. Try the code, see what you get, place an order with Fett's, and you won't be disappointed. And we thank Fett's for their continued support of this channel.